I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Tragic Hollywood's Star of the Week. That was the wonderful Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday in Tombstone. So from that, I guess you guessed that our tragic star of the week is Val Kilmer. He died this week of pneumonia at the relatively young age of 65. That's a year older than I am, actually. Spoiler. Anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about Val Kilmer. He had a somewhat tragic life. He was born in Los Angeles in 1959 to working class parents. He had two brothers. His youngest brother, at the age of 15, died from drowning due to having an epileptic seizure while he was swimming. And Val Kilmer said notably that his family was never the same after that. But Val Kilmer graduated from high school and he went on to become accepted, the youngest person at that time ever to be accepted in the prestigious Juilliard School of Drama in New York City. So he was well on his way to becoming an actor. When he graduated from Juilliard, surprisingly enough, even though he hadn't really had any movie experience, he was very picky about his roles. Steven Spielberg offered him a co-starring role in the fabulous movie The Outsiders, but Val Kilmer turned him down. I mean, Steven Spielberg was like the biggest director of his day, and he turned down the opportunity to work with Spielberg because he had theater commitments, because that's how dedicated Val was to actual acting. It wasn't just about stardom or the money or the fame. He really wanted to be a very good actor. And he had a good foundation for that at the Juilliard School. He starred in a handful of lesser known films, not really the lead in most of these films, but most people remember him in his big break film, which was the role of Iceman alongside Tom Cruise in the mega hit Top Gun. This movie resonated with, again, a young male audience that hadn't really been addressed that much. I mean, they loved this film, and women loved it too because it was eye candy for them. There's Val Kilmer in his prime. He was handsome, he was cocky, he was reckless, he was dangerous, but he had the heart of gold, you know, that type of thing. He had Tom Cruise's back, so he came out smelling like a rose and becoming a rather well-known star after Top Gun.
Sorry to hear about Cougar. He and I were like brothers in flight school. He was a good man.
Still is a good man.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Thought so.
Say, you need any help?
With what?
You figured it out yet?
What's that?
Who's the best pilot?
No, I think I can figure that one out on my own.
I heard that about you. You like to work alone.
So he was on his way at that point. So the next film that he made in 1993 would also propel him into international fame, and that movie was Tombstone. And he played the role of Doc Holliday. And some say that Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday was the best Doc Holliday that they had ever seen. He really immersed himself into this role. He took on a Southern accent, which Doc Holliday had because he was from the South. And he just immersed himself in the personality of Doc Holliday, this gunslinger slash dentist, slash outlaw slash lawman, and he actually stole the picture from, in my opinion, everyone else that was on that film, including Kurt Russell. I think he stole that film. He was so good in that role. Let's take a look.
$500, Holmes. You in or out?
$500. Must be a peach of a hand. Thank you, darling. Kate, you're not wearing a bustle. How dude?
Come on, Holiday. You in or out, God damn it.
Why, Ed Bailey, you look like you're just about ready to burst.
Kurt Russell said later on in an interview that there was customary for cast members to exchange gifts after the end of a film. And I think Kurt might have resented Val Kilmer upstaging him a little bit in this movie, so he gave Val Kilmer a burial plot in the famous Boot Hill Cemetery in the actual Tombstone, Arizona. So I thought that was funny. I didn't even know you could buy burial plots in Boot Hill. I thought it was just a museum, but whatever. I forgot to mention that before Tombstone, he gave an amazing performance in a film about Jim Morrison called The Doors. It's not about The Doors really per se as it is about Jim Morrison and his rise to fame as lead singer for one of the most iconic rock bands to come out of this country in the late 1960s. So he immersed himself in this role. This became a pattern with him. He would dress like Jim Morrison. He would hang out in the same areas where Jim Morrison hung out at. And he completely tried to get into the mindset of this rock star slash poet slash shaman of the 1960s, very enigmatic, complicated person. Jim Morrison was a one-of-a-kind. Val Kilmer put on a performance, and the Doors themselves said that when he was singing songs, that they had a hard time telling the difference between Val's music and Val's voice and Jim Morrison's voice.
Lost in a Roman wilderness of pain, and all the children are insane. All the children are insane. Waiting for the summer rain. There's danger on the edge of town.
He's so good in this film. It's so believable as Jim Morrison that it's easy to suspend belief and actually believe you're watching the real Jim Morrison. Unfortunately, he wasn't even nominated. This was, in my opinion, his finest performance. And yet he wasn't even nominated for an Academy Award or a Golden Globe. And I'm not sure why that was overlooked, because he was phenomenal in this role. After The Doors and after Tombstone, Val Kilmer made a movie called The Island of Dr. Moreau. And there were some movies in between here, but this is the movie I want to talk about because this was a very unpleasant filming experience for Val Kilmer. Marlon Brando was also in this film. And he had received divorce papers from his wife of 7 years while he was just about to start filming this movie. And this really put him in a bad mood. And this is the movie where he got a bit of a reputation for being a prima donna and being difficult to work with. And there are numerous stories from both cast and crew of how he bullied people and how he refused to learn his lines exactly as they were written and decided he was just going to ad-lib this entire film, which of course threw off his co-stars who were expecting to hear one line, and when they heard a completely different line, they had no idea where they were supposed to come in, and he thought this was hilarious. And yeah, this movie was just Not a very good time for him. And it showed in the production, and the movie did pretty dismally at the box office too. So he was on a high of hits, and then this movie came out, and it was just kind of a flop because it was almost palpable, the stress and the frustration of the people that were making that movie. So yeah, that was not a good experience for him. So then in 1995, he made a film with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, and this was a really good movie. It was called Heat, and this has become a classic crime thriller film, and it was a huge box office success, and there are no stories of him acting out on that film, so I'm assuming that he got along with everybody on that film, and so he was once again at the top of his game. Take a look. So in 1995, he got what would be a very memorable role. A lot of people remember him in this role. He was offered the role of Batman in Batman Forever. And this was a sequel to the Michael Keaton movie, Batman Returns. Michael Keaton was offered this role. He said, no, thanks. And Val Kilmer took it without even looking at the script because he knew Batman was such an iconic role. And he regretted every single minute of this filming. Again, it was an awful experience for him. And most of that had to do with the Batman suit, which was rigid, hot, and tight. And he said he could barely move in it, and he could barely talk in it, and he was sweating profusely almost all the time he had to wear it. He said it was the most uncomfortable filming experience he ever had, and he swore he would never do a Batman film after that. But this movie actually did really well at the box office, as Batman movies tend to do, and his performance was praised. So he was on top of his game. Even so, he said he would never do another Batman movie, and he kept to his word. Let's look at Val Kilmer and Batman.
I have a riddle for you.
For me.
Really? Tell me. I see without seeing. To me, darkness is as clear as daylight. What am I?
Please! You're as blind as a bat!
Exactly.
So as the 90s became the 2000s, it seemed like Val Kilmer kind of lost interest in Hollywood a little bit. He decided to step away and do more theater work, and his parts became fewer because by this time he did have a rather difficult reputation, and he wasn't a big enough star that he could overcome that difficult reputation. So he kind of slipped away from Hollywood, spent a lot of time at his ranch, in New Mexico, spent a lot of time in doing theater work and repertory work and doing small parts in independent films or large parts in independent films. Some of these movies included The Traveler and The Fourth Dimension, but these were not the kind of blockbusters that he had been used to starring in before. He also began to have financial difficulties because he wasn't making the kind of money that he used to make. He was paying child support and alimony to his wife, and so he was forced to sell his beloved ranch, his beloved 6,000-acre ranch, and to pay his bills, essentially. So he was falling on pretty hard times. So he began doing, in around 2010, he began doing a one-man stage production called Citizen Twain, which was about this life story of Mark Twain as told by Mark Twain. And this was actually doing really well. He was enjoying doing this production and traveling across the country and doing this production. But at a certain point, he began to have issues with his voice. He began to get a persistent sore throat and a constant cough. And one night, he simply couldn't go on at all because he had no voice at all. So this prompted him to go to the doctor, and the doctor diagnosed him with throat cancer. So he had been a heavy smoker his whole life, and I guess this kind of caught up with him. So he had to ditch the cigarettes by then, and he had to get an operation to, operate on the cancer. And for 2 years, he did not let anybody know what was wrong with him. And he refused to admit, even though the rumors were out there, he refused to admit that he actually did have cancer. So after about 2 years, he finally came clean. I think it was in 2017. And he finally said that, yes, he was healing from cancer, seemed to have been taken care of, but it left him with a hole in his throat right here, and his voice was nearly gone, and he had to use a voice box pressed into that hole into his larynx to be able to talk, and it left him a little bit disfigured up in the jawline here. So he was not the same Val Kilmer after that. So he seemed to have beaten the cancer, but it left him weakened and shaken and not the same person that he was before. He did make one last big movie appearance, and that was in 2022, the remake of Top Gun called Top Gun 2 Maverick. Everyone in the cast who was still around was able to return to this film, including Tom Cruise, and Val Kilmer made his appearance. Of course, he didn't look like the famous Iceman of the original movie, and they had to digitally enhance his voice. But because we have all sorts of cool stuff these days that can do that, he made a great return to this movie, and it's a fitting final performance for Val, and he was very happy with that.
The Navy needs Maverick. The kid needs Maverick. That's why I fought for you. That's why you're still here.
Thank you, Ice, for everything.
He died just last week on April 1st, 2025. He had pneumonia, and he died from that. I'm sure that his system was weakened by his cancer, and that's probably why he couldn't fight off the pneumonia. Rest in peace, Val. Everyone loved your films and appreciate your integrity as an artist and as an actor. Thank you, everyone, for joining me this week. I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked it enough to like and subscribe. And please check out my books, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Still Dead, and my novel, Goodbye Angel, Goodbye When Dreams Aren't Enough. I really appreciate you watching my videos, and we'll see you next week.